Welcome to Emovura Audiobooks. Today's story is With You, I Simply Am, a continuation of Before You, I Was Disappearing. This is the story of Priya Sharma and Sushant Burma, two people who had each already survived a marriage that asked them to disappear, and who built, afterwards, something neither of them had a name for. Not a marriage, not quite anything the world had a box for. Just two addresses and a life freely chosen between them, every single day. Chapter 1. Two addresses, one life. Priya kept her flat in Northcote, with its bay window that measured the light like an instrument. Sushant kept his in Fitzroy North, a narrow terrace with a courtyard he'd planted badly, and an armchair he wasn't prepared to negotiate. 18 months in, neither had any intention of merging the two. He told her early on, gently, I spent 3 years disappearing into someone else's rooms, arranging myself around someone else's silences. I built this flat back up one piece of furniture at a time, the way you build a person back up. I'm not ready to give the whole shape of it away again. And she understood him completely, because she'd spent 6 years learning the same lesson from the other side of it. Her mother, Meenakshi, worried on the phone. A woman who believed love without paperwork was a house without a roof. But Priya held firm. I spent 6 years inside an arrangement the world recognized completely, she told her. Everyone congratulated us. And I was disappearing the entire time, and not one certificate stopped it. What I have now is the first thing I built on purpose, with my eyes open, choosing every single piece of it. They kept unspoken rules. Tuesdays were hers alone, Thursdays were his, for the pool he'd once quietly given up to keep a fragile piece. A paper calendar pinned to her pantry door held the whole shape of their two interleaved lives, nothing sliding into being ignored, nothing disappearing into the seams. Chapter 2. The weight he put down. Sushant had spent a decade calling his hypervigilance just being careful. It had actually belonged to his ex-wife, Meera, who ruled her own fear by shrinking the world around her until it stopped moving unpredictably. 11 months into this new thing with Priya, he caught himself mid-laugh, glancing at her face for the flicker of displeasure he'd once had to anticipate before it arrived. She named it gently, without accusation. You laughed, and then you checked whether it was allowed. He didn't have to, she told him, taking his floury hand across the counter. He could be as loud as he actually was. The feeling arrived fully one ordinary Saturday. A market morning, too many vegetables, a long, unhurried lunch, and Priya asleep on the couch with a book sliding off her chest in the particular, unguarded way people only sleep when they trust the room around them. Sushant sat in the bay window with his tea and felt something rise in his chest he didn't, at first, have a word for. He thought, I am safe here, not rescued. He was careful never to make her his rescuer, but accompanied, steady, unhurried, entirely voluntary company, requiring nothing except the willingness to keep showing up as himself. He understood, watching her sleep, that the absence of a wedding wasn't the absence of commitment. It was proof of exactly the opposite. Chapter 3. What nourishes. Sushant couldn't cook when they met. I can make dal, he told her, and eggs 4 ways. And beyond that, I am, professionally speaking, a man who has survived on the goodwill of other people's kitchens. 3 years of a marriage where the kitchen belonged to Meera alone had taught him that offering to help was received as criticism, and he'd simply stopped eating with any real appetite at all. Priya taught him her mother's dal, patiently, over burnt cumin, in a wooden spoon guided by her hand. You're building smoke, she told him, not unkindly, Until one evening he called her, oddly proud of himself. "I cooked dinner tonight? For myself, alone, and I ate it, sitting down at the table, and it was mine." They cooked for her parents in Dandenong. Her father delighted that this one, unlike her first husband, actually asked questions in the kitchen. "His tempering technique is terrible," her father said, "but he takes correction well, which is rarer than good technique." That winter, Sushant's doctor noted the changed blood work, the regained weight. "A woman taught me to cook," he told Priya, still amazed by the plainness of it. "And now, I actually sit down for meals instead of managing them standing at a counter." Health, he realized, had never really been about willpower. It was simply about someone noticing whether you ate, until you remembered how to notice it yourself. Chapter 4. Two Wheels, No Rush. The bicycles were Sushant's idea, a memory of cycling Delhi's ridge roads as a boy with his uncle, filed away for years under things I used to do. They rode the Mary Creek Trail most Sundays, then further out through the Yarra Valley's vineyards, going gold in late summer. "I used to think rest had to be earned," Priya said once, lying back in the grass. Sushant disagreed. "That's not rest. That's maintenance. Maintenance keeps the machine running. Rest is for people, not machines." His own father had worked 6 days a week and called Sundays recovery, the way you describe changing a car's oil, and Sushant had promised himself he wouldn't live that way, and then had for another year before catching himself. There was one autumn ride where they simply stood on a low bridge for 20 silent minutes, watching a family of ducks negotiate the current, and the silence held nothing to fear in it. No held breath, no wound that needed managing, just two people who trusted each other enough not to need it explained. "Good ducks," he said eventually, entirely deadpan. "Exceptional ducks," she agreed, and rode home, thinking she had never known a Tuesday-shaped life could hold this much room in it. Chapter 5. The Mountain Between Meetings. They hiked Wilson's Promontory that first autumn, 6 hours through fern gullies to Sealer's Cove. Priya, stopping repeatedly just to look up at mountain ash, older than either of their grandparents. "I forgot the world could be this big," she said. "I spent 6 years in a flat that photographed beautifully and felt like the entire size of the world." Sushant understood exactly. That's the thing nobody warns you about. How much a bad relationship shrinks your sense of scale. There's a difference between forgetting a thing exists and forgetting you're permitted to have it. They went on to harder trails. The Grampians, which Sushant was careful to also call Garryward. In 10 days on Tasmania's overland track, Cradle Mountain rising jagged above Dove Lake. When Priya's knee gave out on a steep climb, Sushant didn't push through or grow irritated. He simply stopped, crouched, and examined it with careful hands. "There's no version of this where you push through pain to avoid inconveniencing me," he said. "That's not how this works." On the wind-scoured summit of Cradle Mountain, she thought of the 6 years she'd once believed her furthest horizon was a balcony herb garden that photographed well and meant nothing. "Now, I want 100 more mountains," she said. "I intend to be on most of them with you," he answered. "Not because you need the company, because I have never wanted to be anywhere as much as I want to be wherever you're climbing next." Chapter 6. Through the Lens. Sushant's father's old Pentax camera had sat unused in a box for 12 years, carried out of Delhi, and never once opened. He gave it to Priya on the anniversary of the day he'd first seen her sketchbook open on a project table in Geelong. "I thought you already know how to see things," he told her. "The camera would just be catching up to you." She learned it slowly. 24 frames a roll. No preview. Every photograph decided, rather than simply taken. He had his own quiet history of photographing Melbourne's old buildings, ghost signs, bricked-up doorways, bluestone laneways, a hobby Mira had never bothered to manage because she thought it harmless. "I want to show you the door instead of guarding it," he told Priya, and they began walking together on Saturday mornings, learning to see buildings as biography rather than backdrop. They taught themselves to develop black and white film at home. Their first roll ruined entirely by a light leak. Sushant declaring with wounded dignity, "This is not funny," and laughing anyway, despite himself. Eventually, they mounted a joint exhibition, his architectural photographs, her drawings, titled simply, "Still Here." At its center hung a photograph Priya had taken of Sushant without his noticing, entirely absorbed in an old shopfront, being seen for the first time in years. Chapter 7. The Books Between Them. Priya's first husband, Rohan, had never read. An entire dimension of her interior life had gone permanently unshared for 6 years, folded small and carried alone. Sushant read constantly, hungrily, finishing 300-page books in a weekend and wanting, urgently, to discuss them. "Read me something now," he told her. Once she'd confessed her old silence. "Anything. I'll actually listen." She cried a little and read to him for 20 minutes, and he asked 3 questions afterward that proved beyond doubt he truly had been listening. Wednesday evenings became sacred, an hour of reading side by side, a shared notebook where they wrote down, unprompted, things they'd learned, offered without performance. "Mira never once asked what I was reading," Sushant admitted. "This is 2 people who've decided the other's mind is worth the trouble of asking about. Every week, on purpose." Their reading nights eventually grew into a small monthly gathering of friends. Wine, cheese, and a chosen book, arguing amiably past the hour anyone meant to leave, in a home that no longer needed managing. Chapter 8. Sitting Still Together. An old anxiety crept back into Priya's chest in their second year, the residue of 6 years spent scanning a room for permission to exist. She began meditating alone at dawn, telling no one for 2 weeks, afraid that naming the need might invite it to be managed. Sushant noticed anyway. He noticed most things, and asked simply, without pushing her through the door he'd left open, "Would you like company, or would you like it to stay yours?" The question itself, and the fact that either answer was genuinely fine with him, undid something in her. He turned out to be terrible at stillness. A man whose mind ran constant calculations, now asked to sit with nothing, spending most of 11 minutes thinking about a bridge engineering problem. They never built a shared practice exactly. His solitary dawn walks did for him what her cushion did for her, and neither ever made the other's ritual a referendum on the relationship. On a silent weekend retreat, 2 people who loved talking to each other discovered that shared silence, freely chosen, could be its own form of intimacy. Good quiet, he called it afterward, the kind that doesn't need managing. Chapter 9. Groundwork. They found a derelict, heritage-listed boat shed near Point Lonsdale, timber gray and leaning, scheduled for demolition. Sushant read its joinery the way he read every old building. Priya, crouching beside him in the sand, recognized the real problem instantly. Not the structure, but the eroding dune underneath it. "That's the gap," Sushant said quietly. "Nobody's sitting in the middle of it." "We are," Priya said. "Right now." Out of that single evening's excitement, in the shared notebook, they built a small practice together. Groundwork, heritage, and coastal resilience, combining his structural rigor with her sediment science. They fought once, properly, over pricing, until Sushant admitted his old instinct to underprice himself was fear-talking, a habit left over from Mira, not the actual market. Their unpaid submission for the boat shed eventually became a real, paid commission. Their names on a letterhead together, for the first time. "We did that," Priya said, standing at the kitchen counter over the confirmation email. "Slowly, correctly, together," he agreed, and pulled her close. Chapter 10. Freely, every day. At the opening night of Still Here, surrounded by 2 years of their combined attention hung on the gallery walls, Sushant told Priya something he'd been considering carefully for a long time. "I don't want to marry you," he said, and let it sit there before continuing. "Not because I don't love you. I have never in my life loved anyone the way I love you. I don't want to shape with you. I want exactly this. 2 addresses, our own rhythms, choosing each other freely every single day, without a document making the choosing obligatory." "I don't want to marry you either," Priya answered. "I tried the ceremony once. It came with a ring and 140 guests, and no one who actually looked at me. I know this is real because I wake up every single day and choose it, on purpose, with my eyes open." They told her mother together that Sunday, over Dal Sushant had finally learned to make correctly. Meenakshi listened and softened. "I don't need it to look like what held me up," she said at last. "I only ever wanted you held up, Beta." That winter, Sushant's book on Melbourne's built heritage, 12 years of solitary walking notes, was finally published, dedicated to the woman who taught me that being seen does not have to be earned, only received. Priya's own career bloomed alongside his, culminating in the largest coastal consultancy of her career. On their 3rd October, they returned to Sealer's Cove, to the same fallen log, the same fire. Sushant produced something small, wrapped in brown paper. "This isn't a ring," he said. Inside was his grandfather's old brass compass, carried on every hike since. "I'm not asking you to marry me," he told her. "I'm asking you to keep finding your own way, and to let me walk beside you while you do it." "I'll keep it," she said. "And I'll keep you. Not because a document says I have to, because I choose to, this morning, and I fully intend to choose it again tomorrow. That's all I've ever wanted," he said. "The choosing, freely, every day. Before you, I was disappearing. After the leaving, I began to find my way. With you, I have never once had to shrink to fit the room. We built no blueprint. We needed none. 2 whole people, freely choosing, not because we must, but because every single day we still want to. This is not the absence of commitment. This is what commitment looks like when no one is required to disappear to keep it." Thank you for checking out With You, I Simply Am. If you'd like to read the complete story, it is now available on Amazon as both a Kindle, eBook, and a paperback. You can also explore the previous book in the series, Before You, I Was Disappearing, available as a Kindle, eBook on Amazon. Thank you for your support and happy reading.